Hello, my name is Emma Patterson, and I will be doing a presentation on obesity and its prevalence in America. I think it's best to start off the presentation by defining for you what obesity is. Now, it was pegged by the CDC as a serious and chronic disease, which later in the presentation we will all begin to kind of learn why exactly it's so serious and not just the state of somebody being overweight severely, right? And then additionally, the Mayo Clinic has said that it's a complex disease involving an excess amount of body fat, which should line up with anything that you kind of have formulated already knowledge-wise or opinion-wise about obesity, right? It's that possession of an excessive amount of body fat. And the way that that's measured is through something called BMI. So BMI is very simply body mass index, and personally I think that that is a great little tidbit of knowledge to know because it comes up in a lot of conversations about fitness and general health, but also nutrition, and it really plays quite a large factor in determining the best types of all of those things for you as an individual, but basically BMI is defined as the body's mass divided by the square of the body's height. And that's kind of how that's measured, but it's used to determine body fat percentage. And the graph shows the kind of average percentage of the BMIs in these states, right? And so the ones that are red are showing that there's, 35 to 40% of people in that state are obese and have those higher body mass index and so forth. So that is an explanation of the graph. Now to get into the diseases caused by obesity. If you remember previously, I mentioned the fact that obesity was defined as being a serious and chronic disease, and that comes into play through all of the different diseases and health concerns that are posed to those that are obese or severely overweight. Some of them including diabetes, heart disease, certain cancers, and high blood pressure. Now, there are definitely, like a dozen that can be kind of posed, but I thought that these were some of the most familiar and definitely some of the most dramatic. So that's just something to keep in mind, right? That obesity doesn't just have the maleffect of one being overweight, right? It really poses a threat to their overall health and general well-being. We just took a look at the diseases that can be caused by obesity, but how big of a problem really is it? It was said that 42.4% of American adults were suffering from obesity between 2017 and 2018, and that was said by the CDC. Now, I have a hard time believing that number, right? That nearly half of American adults are suffering from obesity. But it becomes less surprising when you think about the way in which our world is kind of functioning, right? Everyone works at a high speed. There's no time for stopping. And fast food, greasy food is so accessible and it's so affordable. And I think that that's where a lot of the danger is. Now, beyond those statistics and, those opinions and guesses, 2.8 million people are dying each year due to overweight or obesity. Now, this isn't a car crash. This is something that can be prevented, and it's not, right? We're losing millions of people each year. And I think that there definitely needs to be a change, right? That's a lot of people to disease that basically could be stopped with the proper implementation of healthy eating and exercise. But that's not just the individual's responsibility. After having gone over how many adults are suffering in America from obesity and how many lives are being lost every year, the question, how did we get here, poses itself naturally. And it was said by obesity expert Barry Popkin that the biggest problem is that obesity rates among low-income Americans and minorities are not improving. And this is due to a lot of things, right? But some that I think are really, really prevalent and relevant are affordability becomes very attractive, right? When you don't have a lot of money to spend in general, you definitely don't want to be spending a lot of money on food, right? Something that you need like 2 to 3 times a day. And especially if you are not just focusing on feeding yourself, but feeding your kids, right? Or other people in your family. Now, additionally, highly stressed populations begin turning to food for comfort. And I think that this is a kind of like societal and cultural norm, right? When we are grieving or when we're stressed out, when things are tough, right? There's a lot of comfort to be found in food, and especially greasy, warm food that's easy to go, right? And that you don't have to make. And that accessibility becomes very dangerous. Now, lastly, fast-paced lifestyles eliminate ample time for sit-down family meals. I know personally that I have extracurriculars, my sister has extracurriculars, and my dad works from very early in the morning until, basically the time that my sister and I go to sleep every night. And that does not allow for a lot of time to make family meals. Now, we all kind of cook individually and do our own things in that way, but a lot of people do not have the flexibility to do that. And that is just another way that obesity and that overconsumption of fast food that has no nutritional value or sustenance comes into play. And that's how we get such large numbers of obesity. So now maybe you're wondering, does this impact some more than others? The answer is yes. Hopefully it doesn't come to a surprise to you that Hispanic and Black children had 34% and 80% higher odds of obesity than non-Hispanic white children. This should make sense, right? Black and brown people are marginalized groups who are often underprivileged and overlooked. Now, to switch from race to gender, it was said that 6.8% of American men, as opposed to 11.1% of American women, were deemed severely obese. And I was shocked to find out that the women's percentage was nearly double that of men, just because women have kind of been put with all of these societal standards and pressures to be thin and lean. And I know that there are plenty of women who suffer from eating disorders, but just generally, I would have thought that because of society's lack of standards for men, appearance-wise at least, that they would be the ones suffering more severely from obesity. But this statistic from the CDC says otherwise. Having learned about obesity, its severity and prevalence in America, you should be asking, what can be done? Now, primary prevention is the first step, and that includes anything from early identification of those at risk of gaining extreme weight to creating healthy eating plans and workout regimens. The second step is secondary prevention, and that includes things like the continuation of all of the primary stages, dietary management and workout regimen, as well as the introduction to mental shaping of a person's relationship with food, right? Trying to rework that relationship to be more positive. And the third and final step is the dietary stage, which includes the previously mentioned strategies, of course, but can also add in weight loss medications, and occasionally, sometimes it gets so bad that an individual will need surgery, and that is always available as well. This last slide is something I put together with just a couple ideas of how we can all work to discourage overweight and obesity within ourselves and also our communities. Thank you so much for watching my presentation, and that will be it.